Hey everyone, thanks for joining Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today I'll be teaching you how to play Horrified. This is a newer game by Ravensburger. It is a 1 to 5 player game. It takes roughly half an hour to an hour to play. It is a fully cooperative game where all the players are working together to defeat the monsters on the board. And in this one, you're going up against the legends, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, and many more. Depending upon the difficulty you want to play, you're going to be going up against 2 or more monsters, and throughout the game the players are going to be moving around the board from location to location, gaining items that they're going to use to meet the requirements of each of the monsters. Once they've met all the requirements of the monster, then they can try to defeat it. And if the players are able to defeat all of the monsters that they're playing against before the monster deck runs out, or the terror marker reaches the last space on the terror track, they have won the game. Otherwise, they have lost. So as always, if you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider that like button, subscribe to my channel. It's one of the easiest ways you can support channels like mine so we can continue to grow and produce this content. If you want to stay up to date on all my videos, also consider ringing that bell so you get notifications anytime I release new content. Also, let me know in the comments below if there's any other types of videos that you'd like to see around this game or other games that you would like to see videos for. Let me know. I love hearing from you. So let's go ahead and head to the table and I'll teach you guys how to play. The first thing I want to cover are the dice included, and you're going to get 3 of these in the game. Each die is going to have 2 sides with a blank, which will have no effect when rolled, 3 sides with a hit, and 1 side with an exclamation point, which will trigger the monster's power. There's also 60 item tokens included in the game. Each of these item tokens is going to have a number at the top, which is the item's power, the color background of that item, which there are 3 different colors, yellow for spiritual, blue for intellectual, and red for physical. Then you have the image of the item along with its name, and then the location on the map that item will be placed when revealed. There are also 2 different decks of cards included in the game. This first one are the monster cards, and these are broken down into 3 different sections. The top section is the number of items that will be randomly pulled from the item bag and placed out in locations. Then the middle of the card is going to list an event, with the gray background events being for villagers and the colored backgrounds being specific to each monster. For example, with this one we have Frankenstein and the Bride, and this one is for Dracula. If an event is triggered for a monster that is not included in the game, simply ignore that event and move on to the final step of the card, which is the monster strike. You're going to start by activating the monster on the far left and working your way across. If a monster is activated that is not in the game, simply ignore it and move on to the next one. Each time a monster is activated, you'll resolve its effects, and the first number here is going to be the number of spaces that monster will move towards the nearest villager or hero, and then if a monster is in the same space as a hero, it'll roll a number of dice as indicated here. Once you resolve that, you'll move on to the next monster until you've resolved all of the monsters. The flame symbol is going to be for the frenzied monster, and I'm going to go into more detail about this a little later in the video. The second deck of cards are the perk cards, and these are rewards for players saving villagers, as well as each player will start with one of these at the beginning of the game. Each of these cards will list the name of that card, and then its effect when played, and these can be played during any player's turn, but only during the hero phase. These cards do not cost an action to play, and each card is a single use, so you'll discard it after using it. There are 6 different monsters included in the game, and each monster will have its own card. Each monster's card is going to list the name of that monster on the top, along with the monster's image and the icon of that monster. Each monster will have a frenzy level and a power. Each time a player rolls an attack with a monster, for every exclamation point rolled, that player will have to resolve that monster's power. Underneath that, each monster has 2 steps in order to defeat it. The players must meet all of the conditions of the first step before moving on to the second step. For example, with Dracula, with his first step, you must smash all 4 of the coffins, which are going to be at different locations around the map. In order to do that, you'll have to discard items with a total power of 6 or greater in order to smash each one of the coffins. Once the players have met all of those conditions and have defeated all 4 of the coffins, they can move on to the second step, where one player needs to be in Dracula's space and discard yellow items with a total power of 6 or higher to defeat him. At that point, he's going to be removed from the game. And each one of the monsters works differently, and at the end of the video, I will cover all the different monsters in greater detail. On the back of each monster's card is also going to be the setup for each one of the monsters. For board setup, go ahead and place out the main game board in the middle of the table, and then you can also place out the 10 villagers and the dice for the game. Then go ahead and grab the terror marker and place that on the 0 spot on the top of the board. From there, then you're going to choose your difficulty and the number of monsters you want to play. If this is your first game, it is recommended to use Dracula and the creature from the Black Lagoon, but you can also check this chart here for difficulty ratings. You can simply deal out the monsters or however you want to do that. For my game, I'll be playing with Dracula, the Mummy, and Frankenstein and the Bride. Each one of these on the back of the card will give you full setup instructions for the monsters you're using, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Once you have the monster board set up, then you're also going to place out the monsters, again listed on the setup. So Dracula will go into the crypt. We have Frankenstein down in the graveyard. The Bride is going to be in the dungeon. And then I'll have the Mummy starting in the museum. Then you're also going to place the frenzy marker on the lowest frenzy score monster you're using. So for my game, it'll be on Dracula. From there, you also want to shuffle up the monster deck and place that out. For player setup, each player will be randomly dealt one of the hero badges, and each badge is going to list the number of actions that hero will be able to take during its turn. Some of the heroes will also have an ability that they can use just like any other action, the listed name of that hero, and their starting location. When a player gets a badge, they'll also collect the standee of that hero, and they'll also gain a quick reference guide for their turns. Then go ahead and grab the perk deck, shuffle it up, and deal one card to each player. The rest of the perks can also be placed off to the side. The final step is to grab the bag and place all 60 item tokens in the bag. Shuffle those up and then draw randomly 12 tokens. The rest of the tokens can be just placed off to the side, and these 12 will be placed out again. Each one is going to tell you where it'll be placed. Once you've completed placing out all the tokens, then you're ready to move into the game. Horrified is played over an undefined number of turns. Starting with the first player and proceeding clockwise, each player will continue taking turns until one of the endgame conditions is met, which is either the players have run out of time and the monster deck has been depleted, or the players have successfully defeated the monsters that they're playing against. The final step is to choose one of the players to be the starting player, and you can do this in any manner you want to. For my game, I'm going to have the scientist be the starting player, so we're going to move into her turn, and the first step in her turn is the hero phase. During the hero phase, she gets to perform a number of actions based on the number of actions that's listed on the top of her badge, and she can do any of these actions in any order she wants to, even multiple times, and I'm going to take you through each one of these actions. The first action I'll look at is a move action, which allows you to move your hero from its space to an adjacent space that is connected by a lit pathway. You are never allowed to move on to river spaces, and the only space you can cross river spaces are the two bridges that are on the map. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that my scientist wishes to move from the Institute to the laboratory, so she's going to spend one action to move there as there's a connected pathway. Now, she cannot move from the Institute to the graveyard as there is no lit pathway that's connecting those two locations. Likewise, she cannot move from the Institute to the docks because, again, there's no lit pathway and she would have to move on to a water space. Now, there's a couple other important things that I want to point out with movement. If you're in the same space as a villager, you can move the villager as part of that move action with you. And you can do that with any number of villagers that are in the same space as you. So for example, our scientist has a villager in here, so she could move from the Institute to the laboratory as an action, and then she could also spend another action to move to the shop. Now, one other thing I want to point out, some of the perk cards as well as some of the special abilities on heroes will allow them to be placed in different locations, such as the courier. So as you can see with his ability, he can be placed anywhere next to another hero that's on the map. Now, one important thing with that is if he has a villager with him, he cannot take that villager as part of that action. So let's say that he wished to use his special action to move next to the scientist. He would have to leave the villager, as a place action is not the same as a move action. The one other thing I want to point out with movement is that monsters do not affect your movement. So let's go ahead and say that Frankenstein was in the laboratory and our scientist moved in there and then she wished to move to the shop. She is not restricted in any way by the fact that there's a monster in the same space as her when she wishes to move. And this also includes villagers as well. So if you have a villager, you can also move them without any problem with the monster. The guide action is going to allow you to move a villager from an adjacent space into your space following a lit pathway, or from your space into an adjacent space following a lit pathway. So for example, let's go ahead and say with this hero, during his turn, he wishes to use a guide action to move this villager into his space, and then he's going to spend another guide action to move the villager from his space into the shop, as each villager has a destination that's listed on the top of their token, and if they reach that location, then that hero that guided them there or took them there will gain an additional perk card. The pickup action is going to allow you to take any number of items in your current location and add them to your playing area. The share action is going to allow any heroes in the same space as the active hero to share any number of items among any heroes that are in there. The one exception to this is you are not allowed to share perk cards. So let's look at an example. Let's go ahead and say that the scientist really needs some yellow items to help her defeat the mummy. And the archaeologist is in the same space as her, so he's going to go ahead and give her the yellow items. Then the courier is also in that space, and he doesn't have any items now, so we want to make sure that we protect him from some monsters, so we're both going to give him a blue item from our areas. The advance action is going to allow you to work on one of the objectives of the monster, and this is going to depend on the monster you're playing against. For this example, we're going to look at the mummy, and with his advance action, you must be at the museum, and you must spend a yellow item to move the scarabs as many places as the item's strength. So let's go ahead and say that we use this item here, which is a strength of 4, so it allows us to manipulate these scarabs up to 4 times. So the first one I'll flip over. Then I will, let's say I move this one down, so that's hit the second, move this one, or flip that for my third, and I'll move it over for my fourth. So that is that action. From there I can spend another advance action and do it again if I have another item and I still have actions remaining with my hero. The defeat action is going to be different for each monster included in the game. At the bottom of each monster's card will list how you're able to defeat that monster. Now, in order to do this action, you must have met all the requirements of the first step of that monster before proceeding here. So, for example, with Dracula, we must smash all 4 of the coffins before we can proceed to try to defeat Dracula. So in this example, let's go ahead and say the archaeologist is in the same space as Dracula, and we've smashed all 4 of the coffins, so we're going to proceed to the defeat step. When in Dracula's space, we're going to discard yellow items with a total value of 6 or greater to defeat him. So our archaeologist has 2 items that are both 3s, so he can discard these, and he'll defeat Dracula. When you defeat a monster, you're going to remove that monster and any tokens that monster has on the board, including tokens that are placed on players' boards, such as with the mummy, where he has the soul sign. You'll also remove that from the game and add it back to the box. If that monster is the frenzied monster, this will move to the next monster that has the lowest number. So in our game here, it'll move to the mummy. Then again, all of the cards and tokens in the monster will be discarded to the box, and anytime a monster card comes up later on in the game that has that monster symbol on it, you will simply ignore it as any other monster that you do not include in your game. And the final type of action is a special action, and some of the heroes will have a special action that is listed on their card. They can carry this out just like any other action, and they can do this any number of times up to the maximum number of actions they have. So for example, with the archaeologist, let's say it's his turn, he is allowed to pick up items from an adjacent space. So he could spend an action to pick up this item from the tower and add it to his area, even though he's not in the same space as that item, carrying out his special action. Then if he moved 2 more spaces and then say he wanted to gain these items, he could also do that again using his special action. Let me put this all together now and show you a sample hero turn. So we're going to go ahead and start with the scientist, and she's going to start by taking her first action to move into the laboratory. Then she's going to spend her second action to collect all the items there, adding them to her area. She'll go ahead and move again as her third action, and I think she'll move one more time onto the bridge. Now that would be all 4 of her actions, but she can choose to spend a perk card if she has one, as well as any other hero can do the same. So for the sake of this example, I'm going to go ahead and say that the archaeologist is going to spend his show of force, which allows him to place the creature in any space or move any monster 3 spaces. So he's going to go ahead and discard that, and he's going to go ahead and move the bride 3 spaces into my hero's space. Then my hero is going to spend her perk card late into the night, and this gives the current player 2 additional actions. So she's going to go ahead and spend her first of those to play an advance action. This will allow her to activate the monster's first area. And so with the bride, she's going to spend an item, and based on the number on that item, she'll be able to move the bride's track or dial that number of spaces. Now, I do have a special ability which says that I may add 1 strength to any item I use. So this item is a strength of 1, but with my scientist, it's a strength of 2. So I'll get to move that dial 2 spaces. Then I can also choose to move the bride that number of spaces. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and discard this item, and then I'm going to do that same action again, this time with this item, which is a strength of 2, which with my scientist will be strength 3. So again, I'll move that dial down and discard that item, and this time I am going to move the bride 3 spaces. At that point, then, if I don't have anything else, my hero's phase is over, and I'll move into the monster phase. To start the monster phase, you're going to draw the top monster card from the monster deck, and then you're going to resolve its effects. Starting at the very top of the card, it's going to list a number of items that you're going to pull from the bag. Now, some of the monster cards will list 0 items. In that case, you will not resolve that step. So this one has me reveal 3 items from the bag and place them out. Okay, so I have 1 item at the Institutes, I have 1 at the theater, and 1 in the barn. From there, then I'll move on to the second step where I'm going to resolve the event if I'm able to. So this one is a worried fiance. Place Elizabeth at the mansion. So we have Elizabeth, and she is at the mansion now. Once you're done with that, if you're able to resolve it, now again, if it's a monster one that is for a monster that is not currently in play or that you're not playing in this game, simply disregard it and move on to the final step where you're going to activate each one of the monsters in order, starting with the leftmost and then resolving its effects there. So with that, I have Frankenstein first. He is going to move 1 space, and then if he's in the same space as a hero, he will attack that hero. So he'll move 1 space, and he's going to move by the shortest path towards the closest hero or villager. So that is his only route, as that is the only space that he can go into. So he'll move there, and then he's not going to attack as there's nothing in his space to attack. Next will be the bride. So again, she's going to move 1 space towards the hero or villager that's closest to her. Again, she only has 1 option. And then finally, the frenzied monster will activate, which is going to be Dracula, as he has the frenzied token. So again, he is going to move 1 space towards a hero. Let's go ahead and say for this example, though, that we had a hero in the same space as him. So first off, we would activate him, he would move 1 space, and then he is going to roll a number of dice as shown on his thing. So he's going to roll 2. And we rolled 2 blanks, so no effect. But let's go ahead and say that we rolled this instead. So first off, we're going to resolve the hit on our active hero. The hero can choose to discard an item if he has one. So let's go ahead and say for this example that the hero has an item. So he would simply discard that to the discard pile. Then we would also handle the exclamation point, which is Dark Charm. I will place the current player's hero in Dracula's space. So since this was during the scientist, she would have to be placed in his space. Once you've resolved all of the effects or all of the monsters that you're able to, again, if any monster is listed on there that you're not playing or that has been defeated, simply skip over that monster and move on to the next one. Once you're done with that, you'll go ahead and discard that card and proceed to the next hero's turn in clockwise order to take their turn. Finally, let's go ahead and put this all together, and I'll show you one more example turn. So we're going to move over to the archaeologist to take his turn. So he's going to start off by spending a move action to move into the tower, and then he's going to move into the theater. So he's got 2 actions remaining. He's going to do a special action that will allow him to grab items from an adjacent location and add them to his area. And then he's going to do that one more time with the tower, pulling it over to his location as well. That is his 4 actions, and he doesn't have a perk card, and nobody else wants to play a perk card at this point. So his hero phase is over. So then we're going to move into the monster phase where we'll draw a card. So this one is going to have us draw 2 items and place them out. And we have another one for the Institute and another one for the barn. From there, then we'll handle the event. So this is Hypnotic Gaze for Dracula. So move a hero or villager closest to Dracula 3 spaces towards him. Right now, the villager is the closest to him, so the villager would move into his space. Now, the one thing I do want to point out with these is when you have a event that is specific to a particular monster, that does not mean that that monster is going to attack. The only time that's going to happen, again, is if that monster's icon is listed down at the bottom, or if it happens to be the frenzied monster and the frenzy symbol is at the bottom of the card. So then the final step in this card is to have all the monsters activate. So the first one is the mummy. It's going to move one space. So it'll move there, and then again, it is not going to attack as there are no heroes in its space. Then it would be the invisible man. He is not out and he is not being played right now, so we would skip over him. Then it is the creature from the Black Lagoon, again, not being used. So that is all we have to do with that card, and it'll be discarded. From there, then we'll proceed to the next player's turn to take their turn. This is going to continue until one of three different conditions is met. Either the heroes have defeated all of the monsters they're playing against for this game, in which case they will immediately win, or if the terror marker reaches the last space on the terror track, the players will immediately lose, and the entire village is going to be abandoned as everyone is too horrified of the monsters to continue. The last way is if the players are required to draw a monster card from the monster deck, and it is empty, the players have also lost immediately. Now that I've covered the main features of the game, there's a couple of additional things I want to talk about real quick before moving on to the monsters. So the first thing are the villagers, and each villager is going to have a name at the bottom, and then the location that they're trying to get to be safe. So with Elizabeth, she's trying to reach the tower. And each time a hero brings a villager to the location that is listed on the top of their token, then they are going to be safe, they'll be removed from the game, and that particular hero will get to draw a new perk card and add it to their area. And the last thing I need to go over is both villager and hero defeat. So anytime a monster is in the same space as a villager and it attacks, then that villager is going to be defeated immediately and the threat marker is going to be moved up one space. Now, if a hero is in a space with a monster when they attack, there is a couple of options. First off, if the hero has any items in his inventory, he can choose to discard one item per hit to negate those hits. So let's go ahead and say that Dracula hits for 2 points. We can go ahead and discard both of these items and my hero is fine. Alternatively, let's go ahead and say that my hero really needed these items and so he didn't want to discard those to negate the damage. In that situation, the hero is going to be defeated as well. The hero will be removed and placed on his area. The threat is going to be moved up by 1, and then that player is out of the game until its next turn. At that point, the player will come back on and will start in the hospital space. He won't lose any of his items or his perks that he currently has. And then the player can take their turn as normal. The one other thing is if you have a hero and a villager in the same space, you can choose who is going to take the hit from the monster. So the hero can choose to defend the villager, discarding his items as normal, and then the villager will be safe. Okay, so at this point you know all the rules you need to begin the game. If you want to see how the monsters work in a little bit more detail, at this point this is what I'm going to do. So starting with Dracula, his first step is that you must smash all 4 of the coffins. In order to do that, you must be in the same space as a coffin and discard items with a total value of 6 or more to destroy that coffin, taking it and adding it to his board. Once you've smashed all 4 coffins, then you can go ahead and move into Dracula's space, again spending a defeat action, discarding yellow items with a total value of 6 or higher to defeat Dracula. The first step with a mummy is that you must align the scarabs so that each scarab has its face upside with a number matching the number on the side of it. In order to do this, you must have a hero at the museum and then spend an action and spend an item that is yellow. Based on the power of the item, you get to move that number of scarabs. Now you can never move a scarab that is face down, so you first have to spend an action to flip that scarab face up. Then, for my second action, I'm going to go ahead and slide that down. In my third action, I'll flip over another scarab. At this point, then that is done, and I can continue on. If I have any more items, I can spend another action to do that again. Once all the scarabs are face up and they're in their proper positions, then you must move into the same space as the mummy and discard red items with a total power of 9 or higher to defeat the mummy. With Frankenstein and the Bride, you are trying to first raise each of the monster's humanity. In order to do this, you must be in the same space as that monster and then spend an item of the matching color. So with Frankenstein, it must be yellow items, and with the Bride, it must be blue items. When you spend an item, for example with this one here, it'll raise their gauge that number of spaces. So with Frankenstein, we'll move his gauge up 4 spaces. And then we can also choose to move Frankenstein up to 4 spaces away from us so that he doesn't attack us. Now you don't have to move the monster. That way, if you want to spend another action, if you have another item in which to raise their humanity again, you can do so. Once both of the monsters have reached their highest level, so once Frankenstein reaches 11, you'll flip his token over, and once the Bride reaches 8, you'll flip her token over. At that point, anytime the monsters are in the same space together, they have been defeated. Otherwise, if the monsters are ever at the same space and both of their gauges are not complete yet, with both of their faces being revealed, then you're going to raise the terror marker 1 space on the terror track. And then they'll be placed back in their starting spaces. With the Bride, she'll go back to the dungeon, and Frankenstein will go back to the graveyard. With the creature from the Black Lagoon, the first objective is to reach his lair. In order to do this, you must be at the camp and then spend an action and discard an item. And based on the item's color, you're going to move the boat along to that color. So for example, if we did the yellow, we'd move there. And then let's go ahead and say that we had a blue, so then we would move here. Now, depending upon how you choose when to do those, so for example, let's say that I played that blue item first, I would have moved to this space, and then I played that yellow item, I would have been all the way down here instead. So planning out which items to play and when to do that is critical. Finally, once you reach the creature's lair, then if you're in the same space as the creature, you can discard any items as long as you have one of each color, it does not matter on their power, to defeat the creature. With the Wolfman, your first step is that you're trying to brew the cure. In order to do this, you must play blue items when you're at the laboratory and place them based on their number in their corresponding slots. Once you've completed all 6 of the items that you need, then you get to gain the cure. Once you're in the same space as the Wolfman and you have the cure, you will discard a number of red items greater than or equal to 6 to defeat the Wolfman. And the final monster is the Invisible Man. The first step with him is that you must be at the precincts, and then again you're going to play an advance action to place an item that matches the location on his board. So we have the mansion here and the barn there. So once you have all 5 of the locations and items on them, then you can proceed to the second step where you're in the same space as the Invisible Man, and you're going to play red items with a total power of 9 or higher to defeat him. Well, I hope you found that video helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my videos and leave me feedback on them. I do really appreciate it and I take into account everything you say to make the best possible videos. Until next time, I'll see you later.